We know we can get it through the Senate, and I'm confident that if Republicans are released by their leadership to vote for it, they'll vote for it here in the House. Let's pass H.R. 14. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Continuing to reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from West Virginia.
May I have a time check, please, Madam Speaker?
The gentleman from West Virginia has 9 minutes. The gentleman from Florida has 23 minutes. Is that right? 23.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes at this time to the distinguished gentlelady from the District of Columbia, the ranking member on our Economic Development and Public Buildings Subcommittee, Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Okay. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. The American people will be puzzled by why we can't get out of this House what has traditionally been the most popular bill, the transportation bill, and they will hope that we're not on the road to the 30-plus FAA extensions that we had before. You know, it won't do to say, oh, you know, like two kids, you did it too, we did it, so you can do it, therefore we can do it. None of us should have done it. But in any case, we know we don't have to do it this time because the Senate has passed a bill that we could pass as well. So we know the compromise can happen because they've passed a bill with more than 2/3 of their own House, including many Republicans signing on. Compromise is possible if you believe in compromise, and I'm afraid this bill shows that we have a majority that does not. They're on record saying that they must have 218 votes from their caucus alone. Now, that will say to the American people, if we need to pass a bill that will have only people from our party voting for it, while the Senate has passed a bill with both parties compromising, which is the party that does not believe in compromise? You always have to compromise. There's not a lot of difference in the amount of money in these bills. $52 billion per year for the House, $54 billion per year for the Senate. The problem is poison pills. The problem is not treating the transportation bill as it has always been treated, as a bipartisan bill. The problem is not caring that you are having an effect on the recovery if you pass a series of 90-day bills. We should be speeding the recovery instead of clinging to a bill that would kill 500,000 jobs. It's time to compromise. This side is holding out its hand for compromise. We need somebody on the other side to hold out theirs.
Time has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
I'm going to continue to reserve, and I will close at the appropriate time.
Okay. The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from West Virginia.
You want any more time, Peter? Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
Just want to reiterate the point I made earlier. Outside of a minority of their caucus, I believe a majority of the United States House of Representatives believes that federal investment using taxpayer dollars without creating deficit, that federal investment in rebuilding our national infrastructure, the 150,000 bridges on the national highway system that need substantial repair or replacement. The steel that goes into those bridges is made in America. The workers are American workers. The engineers are American engineers. The $60 billion backlog in our existing transit systems, let alone giving Americans more fuel-efficient transit options. $60 billion. Buses made in America. Light rail cars made in America. These are manufacturing jobs, engineering jobs, high-tech jobs. These are not just construction jobs. The construction industry itself is devastated with double-digit unemployment. And passing this 90-day extension, according to the Association of General Contractors, a very Republican-leaning organization, 80% of their political contributions go to the Republicans, so they are not like partisan on our side of the aisle, They say that it is going to mean the states will go to 40 or 50% reduction in their projects this summer because they are not assured beyond that 90 days that they're going to get their federal reimbursements. And many states, unlike this body and unlike the federal government, have constitutional balanced budget requirements, something we should have nationally. That's a debate for another day. But the point is that this temporary extension does cost us jobs. And the bill we'll vote on later today, the Ryan budget, would actually reduce transportation investments by 56% from current levels, which aren't even dealing with the already deteriorated infrastructure and not putting people back to work. So there's this kind of a mixed message on their side. They say, well, just do the 90 days and then we'll do H.R. 7. Well, H.R. 7 will reduce spending and cost 500,000 jobs. Could I have another 30 seconds?
Gentleman, another minute.
And the budget they're going to vote on later today would reduce spending by 56% on transportation. That is mind-boggling. In the face of what confronts our nation, the challenges around the world, the need for jobs. There are people on their side of the aisle just say, the government can't create jobs. They're hung up on this semantic thing. No, the government isn't creating the jobs. The government is investing taxpayer dollars without borrowing to let out private contracts to lowest and best bidders to build these projects with all products made in America, the strongest made in America requirements. So you can't tell me those things don't create jobs. Those are investments. They create jobs. Consumption, tax cuts, doesn't create jobs. They want more tax cuts instead of investment in America. That is so wrong. Let us vote on the bipartisan Senate bill. If 22 Republican senators can support that bill, which would give us 2 years of stability, we ought to have a chance to vote on it in this House.
Who yields time?
Continuing to reserve.
Continues to reserve. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Jerry Connolly.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank my friend from West Virginia. Madam Speaker, America's commuters and businesses want us to speed up transportation improvements. However, the House Republicans have offered only a speed bump. We face a transportation crisis with bridges and roadways crumbling, millions of Americans stuck in gridlock, and transit improvements languishing. We've known that the transportation authorization lapses on March 31, severely jeopardizing projects and jobs in every one of our states. The transportation vote today is nothing more than a 3-month Band-Aid. The Republican plan was rejected on a bipartisan basis because it disinvests in America, cutting $361 million in my home state of Virginia alone. America needs a real transportation plan, a plan that ensures that states and localities don't shutter projects this Sunday, a plan that creates jobs, putting the hard-hit construction industry back to work. Thankfully, there is such a plan. It's bipartisan. This month, the Senate passed it, a 2-year transportation plan on a vote of 74 to 22, including half of the Republicans present. I urge Republican leadership to bring forward the bipartisan Senate bill. It's time to get America moving again, and I yield back.
The gentleman from...
Continuing to reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from West Virginia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm honored to yield the customary 1 minute to the Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, gentlelady from California, Ms. Pelosi.
The minority leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank him for his tireless efforts on behalf of America's workers, for his attempts to bring to the floor a bipartisan transportation bill, as has been the custom in our House, and as we do have the opportunity to do by taking up the Senate bill. The bill in the Senate has bipartisan support, 74 plus 1 who was absent, but supporting the bill. 75 members of the Senate support that legislation. It is bipartisan, it creates jobs, and it is worthy of our support. It has this co-sponsorship of the chair and the ranking member of the committee, from Chairwoman Barbara Boxer to ranking member Senator Inhofe, a wide array of philosophical thinking, all of it coming together around a bipartisan initiative. American people have a right to know why, while the Republicans in the Senate, the Democrats in the Senate, the President of the United States, the House Democrats all support this bipartisan bill, why the Republicans in the House are odd man out. It calls to mind when they were odd person out on the payroll tax cut in December, when all the other parties had come together in a bipartisan way. But what is dangerous about what is happening here today is that this initiative, this kick the can down the road, this my way or no highway bill attitude is costing jobs, and I'm sure that they have been reviewed. 41,000 in North Carolina, 4,500 in Illinois, 4,000 in Maryland. The list goes on, just because of the delay and the uncertainty that is injected into the system. This costs the taxpayer more. Small businesses suffer because they cannot proceed with contracts and the rest to go forward, and it is a job loser, as I mentioned. And so this has nothing to recommend it except to be explained by the fact that the Republicans can't even bring their own transportation bill to the fore and pass it. Their own transportation bill is not a good bill, but at least it would take us to conference. They can't vote for their own bill. I don't know how that happens, that they have a bill that they can't support. But in addition to not being able to support their own bill, and it's interesting that the budget and transportation are on the floor at the same time, they have this bill, and in the budget that they're going to be voting on today, they have cut transportation funding in half, from $90 billion to $46 billion. That's $44 billion worth of jobs, promotion of commerce, improving the quality of life of the American people, building the infrastructure of America, and that means roads, fast mass transit, all the rest of that. Cut that in half. Oh, and by the way, give a tax break of over $300,000 to the wealthiest people in America. Wealthy people get off fine, middle-class people pay, small businesses pay, the taxpayer pays, job seekers and workers pay the price. So I think it's really important to understand what the bipartisan National Governors Association has said. A string of short-term extensions will only increase uncertainty for state and local governments and the private sector. And so, again, I call the House back to its bipartisanship on this legislation. The distinguished chairman, Mr. Mica, has been part of that bipartisanship in the past. And now they come up with a bill that the Republican Secretary of Transportation says is a job loser and is dangerous to public safety, the worst bill he's seen in his 35 years of public service, and his public service has been in this field, and again, departing from bipartisanship. So I urge my colleagues to not aid and abet the Republicans going down this path that is not a good one, but to urge them to bring up the Senate bill. It can go to the President's desk today, putting people back to work immediately. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Lady yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Continuing to reserve, Madam
The
Speaker.
gentleman reserves. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Time check, please, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from West Virginia has 2 minutes, and the gentleman from Florida has 23 minutes. 23.
23. I guess it's not very popular on his side of the aisle. He doesn't seem to have many speakers coming over. I haven't noticed many members of his committee to speak in favor of this extension today. And then I am prepared to close. I would take some time from the distinguished chairman if he'd be willing to yield me some of his time.
Madam Speaker, I'd yield him 30 seconds.
The gentleman would yield you 30 seconds.
That's about all we're getting out of H.R. 7, too. Madam Speaker, if the other side were serious about creating jobs, they would have worked in a bipartisan fashion in this body, as the other body did, to build a bill that could pass both bodies of the Congress and be signed into law. As the distinguished Democratic leader has just said, everybody's on board except the leadership of the House of Representatives on the Republican side. Just as this Congress has done so many times before, I've been in this body over 3 decades, involved in every transportation bill we've done over that time, and every transportation bill we've done has been in a bipartisan fashion, passing this body by overwhelming margins. Instead, today's leadership in this House has plowed full speed ahead, writing a partisan proposal that is aimed at appealing to ideological spectrums of their party. Last month, the Teamsters General President James Hoffa wrote in a letter, and I quote, "How do eliminating OSHA protections for hazmat workers improve this nation's crumbling roads and bridges? How do loopholes in Buy America protections put hundreds of thousands of construction workers back on the job?" End quote. And last month, in a letter addressed to the Speaker of this body, the General President of Labor's International Union, Terry O'Sullivan, wrote, and I quote, "The House must return to the principles of sound governance and bipartisanship that has historically characterized consideration of the Surface Transportation Act." He further noted, "The offsets used to pay for this bill are also irresponsible. Slashing the pay and retirement security of the hardworking federal and postal employees is neither human nor fair. It is an unacceptable attack on the hardworking people who provide essential services for veterans and Native Americans, process our mail, keep our skies safe, our parks clean, and help protect us from threats both foreign and domestic." And as has already been noted, one of our key business groups in this country has found that and that being the Associated General Contractors, has stated the following: the majority of the work is supposed to go out in spring and get done by the fall. Instead of spending 60 or 70% of their budgets, our small businesses, they're going to cut back to 50 or 40% to make sure they have some cash in the fall, end quote. And that comes from one of the major business groups in this country, responsible for putting people to work, responsible for getting our economy moving again. I urge that we take up the bipartisan Senate-passed bill and reject this extension.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time to close.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker and my colleagues, I think it might be time right now, Madam Speaker, that we call the Capitol physician to come to the House floor. I think we should call the Capitol physician because there appears to be on the other side a mass case of loss of memory, and I think that we need to clear up just a few facts in what has been said here. Now, we had the gentlelady from California who happened to be the Speaker of the House. As I recall, the other side controlled the House by a huge margin, the Senate by a significant margin. At one point, most of the time, I think it was 60 votes where you could do anything. They controlled the White House for those 2 years. They could have done anything they wanted to do. President Obama, in fact, sent Secretary LaHood to Mr. Oberstar and myself. I was the ranking Republican, he was the chair, and cut the knees right out from the Democrats and said he wasn't doing a long-term bill, he was doing a 18-month bill, which really sent a death signal to transportation infrastructure projects. And in fact, the other side would be in the majority probably, and I would be the ranking member if they had just done what they could have done. And then they tell you that we can't pass a bill. Well, let's deal with the facts. They 6 times had to do extensions. Not one extension was freestanding. In fact, one time they could not even pass the extension with the House, the Senate, and the White House. In March of 2010, they had to, they actually closed down programs. Madam Speaker, we may need the House physician because there is a case, there are multiple cases of amnesia, and we need to remind folks about the facts and what they've forgotten. So, again, we are here to responsibly pass, and even in the extensions, I offered first a 90-day extension, and I know Speaker Boehner talked to the Senate and the other leaders and said, we'll do a 90. No, we want to do a 60-day extension, they said. And then some of the Democrats felt like they were thrown under the bus, and the 60-day extension that they asked us to do, they couldn't get the votes for. They came down and spoke against yesterday. Madam Speaker, there's something wrong here. I think we really need to get the Capitol physician involved, because the amnesia is very, very serious on the other side. They had earmarks. The last bill was passed with 6,300 earmarks. They had earmarks. They had control. They couldn't even pass a freestanding bill and get it to committee, the full committee. So, again, I think the amnesia is pretty rampant on the other side. Madam Speaker, I might inquire as to the balance of my time.
The gentleman has 17 and a half minutes remaining.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself then 1/2 minute to close. And because I don't want this to be delayed any further, because I want Americans to go back to work, I will yield back the 17 seconds. So 30 seconds first, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
We offer here today a long-term bill that will put people who want jobs in this country back to work, without earmarks, without tax increases. The end of the era of the biggest gorilla walking off with the most bananas is over, and we will pass responsible legislation, and we will get it done. As the cable guy said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get her done, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired pursuant to House Resolution 600. The previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to provide an extension of federal aid highway safety, motor carrier safety, transit, and other programs funded out of the Highway Trust Fund, pending enactment of a multi-year law reauthorizing such programs.
The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The bill is
Recorded vote.
The gentleman has requested.
Yeas and nays are requested.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote. What is wrong with passing that version?
Well, I think when you look at the pay-fors in there, what you see is you see some what I'll call gimmicks in terms of how it's paid for. Secondly, they just run down the Highway Trust Fund to virtually zero, which is going to make them through the next year and a half, but it's going to cause a very big problem when this has to be addressed again. So there are concerns with the bill, but I think that when we get to conference with the Senate, I'm confident we can resolve those.
Mr. Speaker, what specifically with the bill? What specifically are the gimmicks? Because I spoke to Senator Boxer today, and she said that the bill is completely paid for. Nothing about spending, nothing about pork-barrel spending, any of that kind of stuff. What's the specific?
Some of the paid-fors, I don't think pass a straight face test, and we'll deal with that when we get to conference.
Speaker,
yes, sir.
Speaker Boehner, will public leader Pelosi was in here earlier today doubting whether or not there would be whether the House budget would pass today. Will Will there be enough, will that get 218?
We'll be fine.
Speaker Banner, last September there was an issue with trying to offset disaster emergency funding. That was a contentious issue on both sides. Do you intend to offset emergency funding come September, considering that your budget already lowers the levels from the BCA?
We will deal with that issue as we've dealt with it in the past. Listen, we're spending more money than what we're bringing in. We have a $1.3 trillion budget deficit. And we ought to be looking for ways to reduce spending and solve our deficit spending problem. All of the old rules about, oh, well, we can't offset this and we can't offset that. Listen, I've seen members with 1,000 excuses why something should be determined emergency spending and not offset. This is the American taxpayers' money, and we ought to be more protective of it. Last one.
Getting back to the Cooper Latourette, Paul Simpson thing, the fact that it failed so overwhelmingly seems as though that means that people are kind of placing their bets that there will be some sort of overwhelmingly unmistakable mandate from the voters in November for either the Ryan budget approach or Obama's budget approach. Isn't that like a dangerous assumption, just given the state of play politically?
Well, you know, when the President and I were in our discussions and we would get hung up or have a disagreement over something, the President would look at me and say, John, that's what elections are for. Yes, Mr. President, you're correct. That's what elections are for.
Thank you, sir.
Fawn Johnson with National Journal covering the House transportation debate. Why are the House Republicans going with this 90-day extension of the transportation bill?
Well, that was their original proposal. It was actually something that was proposed by House Transportation Committee Chairman John Mica a couple of weeks ago because he thinks he needs that much time, considering that there's a couple of breaks coming up, to gather together the Republican caucus and explain to them his long-term proposal, which is a 5-year proposal to reauthorize the highway program. The reason why the Republicans are putting this one on the floor is because the Democrats have protested the 90-day extension, but they also claim they're not going to vote for it. So the Republicans just figure they might as well go with what they originally wanted.
Well, there's still a 60-day extension on today's schedule?
That's correct.
Are House Republicans planning to approve that one, too?
As I understand it, that proposal is being held as essentially a backup plan if for some reason they can't get the votes for a 90-day extension. It is, as with many things, as you're heading up towards a recess and also looking at the potential of a shutdown, you want to make sure you have all of the options available to you. So what had happened yesterday was that John Mica, who has been sponsoring both of these different kinds of extensions, actually has 2 versions available. The Republicans prefer the 90-day extension. They also say that they have the votes to pass it, so in theory, that 60-day extension probably won't see the light of day, but it's good to have a backup just in case.
The Democrats made a point about the Senate's 2-year transportation bill, so why won't the House Republicans bring that up as the Democrats are requesting?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think mainly, though, is that the Senate passed bill. It is, in fact, a bipartisan compromise. It was very carefully negotiated between the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee, Barbara Boxer, who's quite liberal, and the ranking member, James Inhofe, who is quite conservative. But it does not go nearly as far as a lot of the Republicans, even those in the Senate sometimes, think that it should. John Mica, I think, would actually speak for a lot of the transportation community that they would like a much longer-term bill. He's proposing a 5-year bill. He would like to see a greater consolidation of the current programs that fund the highways and the transits in the Transportation Department. And also, the House members want to have their own stamp on this policy. It's a big policy. It only happens every 5 years. It's huge for the domestic spending levels in the country. And to ask them just to simply take up a Senate bill without putting their imprint on it is, to many of them, insulting.
Well, Congressman Mica wants a 5-year bill. They tried that a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't have the votes to bring it to the floor,
yeah,
right?
That's right. They're having a lot of trouble trying to figure out exactly how to move the bill. They've got some problems. The last time that they did this, they had greater the chairman of the Transportation Committee had a lot more leverage because he was able to put earmarks into the bill. But also they have a large group of new Republicans in the House who are not familiar with this process and who are just now beginning to learn how the legislation would affect their own districts. So it takes some time. Also, keep in mind that John Mica is proposing some things that some might consider fairly radical, and he's going to expect to get some pushback from it.
Well, assuming a short-term passage here in the House, what's it look like in the Senate for the short term, and then longer term? How do both bodies reach an agreement over a longer-term extension?
Well, the second question, I'm not even sure how to answer. But the first one I can tell you is I think that the indications from the Senate Democrats is that they're not going to stand in the way of an extension. Last summer, if you remember, there was a partial shutdown of the Federal Aviation Administration because lawmakers couldn't come to an agreement on a short-term extension, and that made everybody look bad. This one would be much worse because it's a much bigger program. It involves a lot more money. So nobody's saying this, in front of cameras publicly, but my guess is that the Senate will probably accede to whatever the House manages to come up with.
And the Senate would have to do that today or tomorrow.
They would
correct?
have to do that today or tomorrow. It's entirely possible that someone will protest and just say, no, I'm not going to do that. But that would really put a lot of politicians at risk as they're trying to go home and actually drum up votes for the recess. In the longer term, it is a very good question to see just how far the members can come to some kind of agreement. I think that there is actually a willingness in the Congress to try and come up with something, but the Senate members, particularly Boxer and Senator Inhofe, say that they have compromised as much as they possibly can, and they don't see that they can go much farther. So stay tuned on that one.
Fawn Johnson, contributing correspondent for National Journal. Read her reporting at nationaljournal.com. Thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
On this vote, the yeas are 266, the nays are 158. The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Pursuant to House Resolution 597 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole, House and the State of the Union for further consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 112. Will the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Bigger, kindly take the chair?
Okay. The House is in the Committee of the Whole, House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 112, which the clerk will report by title.
Concurrent Resolution establishing the budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2013 and setting forth appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2014 through 2022.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Wednesday, March 28, 2012, a request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 4 printed in House Report 112-423 by the gentleman from California, Mr. Honda, had been postponed. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, the unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 4 printed in the House Report 112-423 by the gentleman from California, Mr. Honda, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 4 in the nature of a substitute, printed in House Report Number 112-423, offered by Mr. Honda of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Today, the House is taking a significant step toward putting Americans back to work, protecting our seniors, and closing President Obama's massive budget deficits. And while Senate Democrats haven't passed a budget in nearly 1,000 days, Republicans are addressing the debt crisis directly, including cutting spending, reforming our broken tax code, and strengthening health and retirement security. Our budget also reverses the President's policies that are driving up gas prices and calls for an all-of-the-above approach to our energy needs. 1 month ago today, during a conversation at the White House, I was encouraged by the President's willingness to discuss the possibility of working together on some of the bipartisan House-passed energy bills. Many of these bipartisan proposals have received support from the President's own Jobs Council. But gas prices have gotten worse, and the administration has taken absolutely no action. Now, Republicans aren't going to wait for the Obama administration to act on behalf of families and small businesses. Yesterday, the HEAT team launched the next phase of the American Energy Initiative, focusing on rising gas prices. This phase includes bills, for example, to responsibly increase energy production on federal lands and freeze new regulations on refineries that will have a harmful impact on our economy. And our committee chairmen are hard at work on both additional legislation to address this issue. You know, I made clear earlier this year that oversight of the Obama administration's policies on jobs, on the economy, and its spending taxpayer dollars was going to be a priority. 2 weeks ago, Chairman Upton at the Energy and Commerce Committee began looking into the Department of Energy's Section 1603 grant program, a Solyndra-style stimulus program that offers cash payments to renewable energy companies. More than $10 billion, with a B, $10 billion has been spent on this, and Secretary Chu said it created tens of thousands of jobs, except there's no evidence to support that. The Energy and Commerce Committee set a deadline for today for the Energy Department and Treasury Department to produce documents or information about what taxpayers got for their $10 billion. The administration thus far has failed to provide the committee with any information to justify this claim. Listen, the American people continue to ask the question, where are the jobs? They deserve the answers and they deserve the truth. Instead of wasting taxpayer dollars on failed stimulus programs, we should be working together on common sense solutions to expand American energy production and address rising gas prices. With or without the Democrats' cooperation, Republicans here on Capitol Hill will continue to work toward this objective.
Mr. Speaker, I want to ask you about the highway bill on the floor today. The leader, Democratic leader, was just out here and she said that Republicans are kicking the can down the road with a 90-day extension, and she called on you guys to pass your own long-term bill so you can go to conference with the Senate.
We expect that after this 90-day extension today, when we get back, we will move quickly to move a highway bill with our energy initiatives and ship it over to the United States Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I was saying what you're going to do, and I know that on the previous bill that you had here, you tried to put Keystone, you tried to put other energy provisions in it. The minority leader was here just a few minutes ago, and she said, quote, I don't know what miracle is going to happen between now and then. Is this going to be the bullet that saves this bill?
We are working on putting together the final touches on that bill, and it'll be ready when we get back.
Mr. Speaker, on the highway bill, I was wondering why you decided to go back to the Hastert rule. When you were coming up as Speaker, you promised that you would bring bills up that a majority, full majority on both sides could support, but it surely doesn't seem like that's the case this time.
Given the fact that we're dealing with the budget this week, doing what I think is a responsible thing and meeting the statutory deadline, trying to make sure that we don't have a stoppage of construction is really important. And so extending this current highway bill for 90 days was the most responsible way forward. We do want to get to the conference with the Senate as quickly as possible.
Speaker, you famously are a stickler for attire, and you've made comments from the chair in the House about people not having proper attire. As you know, Bobby Rush was asked to leave yesterday. But isn't there a double standard, because there are members who go on the floor who are not in proper attire?
Listen, I think the rules are enforced evenly. I've asked members on both sides of the aisle to leave the floor myself. I know the Sergeant-at-Arms has asked members to leave the floor. We expect all members to follow the rules. And the rules make it clear that members are to be on the floor in proper business attire.
So are you going to, I mean, we've seen women, for example, go to the floor with hats on, which is precisely the rule that Bobby Rush cited when Bobby Rush was asked to.
I've not witnessed that, and I think the women members know that that's in violation of the rules.
Speaker Boehner, do you expect votes on tax extenders or any other parts of renewing parts of the tax code before the election?
Yes.
Speaker Boehner, what do you think it says, as someone who dealt to try and reduce the deficit with President Obama this summer, that last night the most bipartisan proposal based on Simpson-Bowles was only able to get 38 votes in the United States House? What does that say about the current state of American politics in regards to deficit reduction?
It says it's pretty divided.
Overwhelming bipartisan majority against feeling pain on both sides. Why?
Listen, the members are responsible to their constituents for their votes. And while I support this bipartisan group and all of the efforts they've put into this, they were doing it in the middle of a pretty heated philosophical debate about which is the best way forward. And while they may have been working with each other, I don't know how much reaching out they were doing to garner more votes.
Mr. Speaker,
I would be supporting the House Republican budget.
Mr. Speaker, you said you're always looking for bipartisan solutions, and the Senate did send you a overwhelmingly bipartisan transportation bill. What is wrong with passing that version?
Well, I think when you look at the pay-fors in there, what you see is you see some what I'll call gimmicks in terms of how it's paid for. Secondly, they just run down the Highway Trust Fund to virtually zero, which is going to may get them through the next year and a half, but it's going to cause a very big problem when this has to be addressed again. So there are concerns with the bill, but I think that when we get to conference with the Senate, I'm confident we can resolve those.
Speaker, what specifically with the bill? What specifically are the gimmicks? Because I spoke to Senator Boxer today, and she said that the bill is completely paid for. Nothing about spending, nothing about pork barrel spending, any of that kind of stuff. What's the specific?
Some of the pay-fors, I don't think pass a straight face test, and we'll deal with that when we get to conference. Yes, sir.
Yes, Speaker Boehner. Will Public Leader Pelosi was in here earlier today doubting whether or not there would be the House budget would pass today. Will there be enough? Will that get through 18?
We'll be fine.
Speaker Boehner, last September there was an issue with trying to offset disaster emergency funding. That was a contentious issue on both sides. Do you intend to offset emergency funding come September, considering that your budget already lowers the levels from the VCA?
We will deal with that issue as we've dealt with it in the past. Listen, we're spending more money than what we're bringing in. We have a $1.3 trillion budget deficit. And we ought to be looking for ways to reduce spending and solve our deficit spending problem. And all of the old rules about, oh, well, we can't offset this and we can't offset that. Listen, I've seen members with 1,000 excuses why something should be determined emergency spending and not offset. This is the American taxpayers' money, and we ought to be more protective of it. Last one.
Getting back to the Cooper-Latourette, Cole-Simpson thing, the fact that it failed so overwhelmingly seems as though that means that people are kind of placing their bets that there will be some sort of overwhelmingly unmistakable mandate from the voters in November for either the Ryan budget approach or Obama's budget approach. Isn't that like a dangerous assumption, just given the state of play politically?
Well, you know, when the President and I were in our discussions and we would get hung up or have a disagreement over something, the President would look at me and say, John, that's what elections are for. Yes, Mr. President, you're correct. That's what elections are for.
Thank you, sir.
Speaker Boehner's briefing from this morning on the House floor. They're voting to one of the substitutes for fiscal year 2013 substitute budget plans, this one by the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Later, they'll debate the plans by the Republican Study Committee and also the Democratic substitute. This has been a 15-minute vote. A vote over in the Senate fails to advance the bill that would, the Senate bill that would roll back tax preferences for large oil companies. They needed 60. The vote there in the Senate was 57 to 41. And in a vote here in the House just a short while ago, they did approve a short-term extension of transportation programs, a 90-day extension that passed 266 to 158.
On this vote, the yeas are 78 and the nays are 346. The amendment is not adopted. It is now ordered to consider Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report 112-423. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
The amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, in the nature of a substitute, printed in House